Hey YouTube, today is October 9th, 2020, and today is FFF number 361. And it's been a couple months since Woob has come out and given us a FFF that we can really sink our teeth into. And apparently there's some big reveals for 1.1. If you like this sort of thing, hit that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you get a note every time I post a video. If you have a question or a comment, leave it in the description below. If you want to attend one of these live, you can come over to twitch.tv/clowntown. All those links are in the description below. With that, let's get to the FFF. All right, here we are. Factorio Friday Facts number 361. Train stop limit. Tips and tricks. Huh. I'm curious about that word. All right. Clonin says, hello. We finished with the regular Friday Facts series, and yet there is still so much we want to talk about. Well, then start talking. I want to clarify that we are not going to release an FFF every week, but there are a few of them coming in the near future. Good. 1.1 is the real 1.0. It really is. Almost all the time, you end up with any sort of project where you have a fixed deadline. You end up cutting scope in order to make the deadline. You gotta. There's always trade-offs. The point of 1.1 is to add new content. The main motivation is to finalize existing features so they work together in a proper way. This may sound a little abstract and boring, but it'll be explained more clearly in the upcoming FFS. Believe me, I do believe you, Conan. The sentence, I didn't know I needed this until now, will come to your mind more than once. Good. That's pretty good. That means they're doing this right, if that's the case. The work on the 1.1 update started basically right after the 1.0 release, so there's already lots to show. I guess so. Right now, we aren't going to make any promises, but we will keep you updated on progress with these blog posts and give some notice before it's deployed. I'm quite certain we're more than halfway through. To keep you happy until it's here, let's go through some of the changes. Train stop limit. I'm hoping this is one I didn't know I needed until now, because I got a pretty good handle on trains. I feel like the general population. There's lots of questions in the weekly Reddit question thread that pop up, and they're always trying to do some funky stuff with having one train that goes to multiple stops. And if they can figure that out, rather than do it the way I do it, with just one train, multiple, then that's it. So, all right. Okay, so the problem. Okay, sorry. The tiny story about Boskid's train-related side project for a feature that was requested quite often. The problem, colon. So imagine a situation, you're sitting in front of your factory, you need more iron. Yes, you do. You always do. So you build a nice railway, bring ore, dedicated mining outposts back to your iron smelter. You build 2 ore outposts, and you set up 2 trains. One for each of you. The 2 trains have a similar schedule. One goes from iron smelting 1 to iron ore 1. And the other goes from to iron ore 2. This works fine. However, there's some problems when you don't want to expand your production. You just want to copy-paste smelting 1 and have the ore go to iron go to smelting 2. You manually start reassigning trains, trying to balance the throughput of the mines and what else. If an iron mine runs dry, they need to rebalance the whole system. No, you don't. You just take the train away. Reassign all the trains from that station and have some omniscient overview of the different routes your trains are running. With more mines and more smelting and more trains, this management becomes an incalculable problem. Frankly, it is not fun. Opinion. I mean, yeah. The many-to-many with one train is pretty easy, right? The problem, many with many. Yeah. I mean, maybe. Okay. All right. The imperfect solution. And probably this is probably the one that I do that most commonly we do. So on our basis. Our solution which works almost. Name all the ore stations. Oh, no, this is not it. Name all the ore stations the same, and name the ore stations and name all the smelting stations the same. The train can go to any of the train stops with that name, which means you build a new ore outpost. You just name it Iron Mine, and the train will come pick up from it. This is not a perfect solution. When you build a new iron smelting, you just name it Iron Smelter, and the train will come get some ore. When you build a new train, you just copy-paste a simple schedule, and it'll start working effectively. No. However, there is a small issue with the system that completely breaks the idea. Trains are not clever. They will path to an arbitrarily chosen train stop. Yes, with the correct name, based on the destination and a few other factors. This means they can easily that it can easily happen that all the trains servicing one iron ore pickup, yes, on the other outposts are full or with no trains coming to pick it up, yes. So you can somewhat relieve the issue with circuit network by unable to disable the train stops. That's only a half measure. That's a really bad idea. For instance, you can still up with 10 trains rushing to a single small iron ore pickup, causing the trains to queue on the main line and jam everything. Stackers. So far, I disagree. That is not a good solution at all. There's lots of tears and crying that go along with this one. 100%. However, there's a small issue with, the limit. It's pretty simple. As solutions typically are, you can set a train's limit in the train stop GUI. Okay, and that keeps track of how many trains are in the station or on their way to it. Okay, that's good, which we call a reservation. When a train is choosing its next destination, it'll check the limit of the stops with that name, and a train stop has too many reservations already, it will skip over it. All the potential train stops are full, the train will just wait. Okay, I mean, this pretty much perfectly solves a problem with naming all the train stops the same and a few other annoyances. For instance, previously your iron smelter stacker would need to be big enough to fit all the iron ore trains at once because you couldn't be sure that they wouldn't return all at the same time. Right. So this one you could set up a stacker, right? If I have only room for 5 trains in the stacker, then your train stop needs to have a limit of 5. All right, that's good. I don't know where it would go otherwise. Maybe if you had 6 trains running and they were full, would it just no path until the first one got going on? Might be all right. The train is almost okay. The pretty much perfectly solved the problem of naming those train stops the same. A few other potential annoyances. For instance, previously your iron smelter stacker would need to be big enough to fit all the iron ore trains at once. Because this is a use case. Because now you couldn't be sure that they wouldn't all return at the same time. Now you can set the train limit to the size of the maximum capacity of the stacker / station. Right, there you go. I jumped the gun. The train limit is also controllable with the circuit network. Oh, so there's even more possibilities. Right, so you could change it. One idea is keep the train limit set to 0 until there is a full load of ore available at the station. Right. Then you could read the current number of reservations, which have its own interesting uses. All right, that's good. If it's circuitable, that's really good. Yes, this is exactly what their station is. One of the folks in chat just said that, hey, we're adding some of LTN. If you're familiar with the LTN mod, it is essentially this. Many people use and love LTN. There's an edge case we want to solve while working on the feature. What happens if the limit is lowered while a train is already on the way? That is the biggest problem that we get on Reddit all the time, where where a user will try and disable a station when it's full and enable a station when it's ready. So if the train is halfway there and they disable the station, the train stops and it's stuck on the main line and with and it'll no path. It sits there, no paths, and that's bad news bears, right? There's an edge case where we had to solve a feature. Yeah, okay. Our first idea was to force all the trains that are on the way to repath to a new destination. This works in many cases, but if there's no train stop we could path to, bingo, it would end up stopping and waiting in the middle of the tracks, cause untold economic damage. So we decided that even if the limit is changed, any train to the reservation will still go there. Good. It's not strictly a hard limit. Yeah, once a reservation is done, it's never canceled. That would fix it. Right. So that means it's strictly a hard limit, but we still think it's a good thing. Is setting the limit to 0 provides an alternative way to control the train behavior compared to when the station is disabled. Basically, the train will only consider the limit when first deciding to which stop to path to. After that, it doesn't care if the limit changes. We also had to deal with the no path warnings. If all the train stops were full to their limit, the train with no path isn't very intuitive to players. So when the train can't find a path, we show a special warning, destination full. Oh, okay. All right, that is handy because no path is kind of a different problem, right? So if you think about it, no path is used for no destination. No path is used for there's physically no path to get to it. And also no path could be a smaller subset of that is not only is there no rail, but the signal could be wrong, right? So there may be another more granular one in there. So anyway, the impact. To an outside observer, this may seem just like a tiny little thing, but for us, it's one of the most exciting features of 1.1. I would agree. I think it's also telling something that's been missing for a long time, given the opportunity of the Logistic Trains Network mod. Ding, ding, ding. So while the train stop limit isn't quite as powerful as the mod, it's going to open up many possibilities and add lots of interesting gameplay opportunities. I don't know if I'm alone in saying I like it when the rules of a game are very simple and the complexity emerges from the interaction of very simple systems. That's exactly right. Just doing the thing that's it's like the chain signal. The chain signal in concept is very, very simple. It essentially tells the train where to stop. All along a stopped up to a rail. It tells the train to stop all along to a rail signal, and it changes all the way back through intersections. That's a very simple concept. But the fact that you do have a chain signal at all opens up so many neat things you can do with trains that other games can't even touch. That's exactly the right use case. I think the train limit is a perfect example of a simple rule that will lead to really interesting and complex behavior. I can imagine riding around on an iron train with simple pick-up iron, drop-off iron schedule. And it shows me driving around the whole factory at a chaotic intersection with train stop limits. And other trains means it's time to travel somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I can imagine a lot of fun design considerations will be needed when building such a rail network where the traffic is less predictable than a static route system. Right, so yeah, if you're doing something like a ribbon world, that's a good static route system, I guess, because you're always going along this main line. You got to build stackers. But maybe we could have solved some of those use cases for that. Interesting. Okay. Tips and tricks. The tips and tricks have been a feature for the game for a very long time. They began as a way to explain things to players that were not explained anywhere else. The iconic example is the alt mode tip. Playing without alt mode is painful. So we had to tell the player somehow. How? When I say early days, I mean early days, even before the Indiegogo campaign. Wow. First implementation of the tips was straightforward, but it was a bit rough. The initial design. Oh, look at this. Ooh, I want to zoom in on this. Look at those belts. Pop up when you start the game. You can click forward and then no going backwards. It's a shame. You can close the GUI. There's no way to reopen it other than load a save game again. Wah, wah. Yeah, images were of inconsistent sizes. So the GUI would jump around and resize. There was a built-in checkbox to turn them off. 064. Wow. Got the job done. Needs some development as with the rest of the game. The first refresh. Over time, all right. The tips and tricks fell into a dark corner. It was always low priority. It wasn't clearly a graphics or programmer task to improve them. It was something in between. That's where I came in, the task of making some improvements. You can click forward and backward through them. You can open and close them with a hotkey. That's cool. The images were retaken at a constant resolution and zoom. You can open them in multiplayer. Oh, cool. Okay, that's good. Oh, look, 1651. There was 10 versions. There was 10 versions in probably 3 years before they were improved. At this point, we shifted focus to the other tutorial channels, right? Hoping the mini tutorials in MPE need as many tips. We think it is better if things like item usages are explained in the item tooltip, right? rather than other GUI elsewhere. Apart from some GUI style updates, the tips and tricks were not changed significantly for the next few major versions. On approach to 1.0, I took a last quick look at the tips and tricks. If tips are one of the first GUI players they see when they start free play, they are. So I wanted to give them a last lick of paint before the new release. There we go. Additional info, left Alt to toggle the detailed info overlay known as Alt mode. It's good resolution. That's, the assembler's still not high res though. The improvements this time were nice. The nice finishing touches to bring the tips and tricks to their final form. Increased range and size, updated to images all to high res, added frames and subpanels to match the visual design of the new GUI. New button styles, generic close button in the top right. So then that's that, right? There should be a comma. I finally rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe, Thanos. The inspiration for change. Even before 1.0 was released, I was inspired by the mini wiki found in Factorio 2 and the Informatron mod. Yeah, that one's in our space exploration playthrough right now. The main spark is the index of topics. It solves many problems. That's right. You can see all the titles right away. You don't have to click through them. Naturally, categorization of them. The player has an idea before clicking on it. The small item icons are usually appealing. Good. Visually appealing. With a deadline of 1.0 and not wanting to expand the scope any further, I let it brew in my mind until now. Cut scope, make that schedule. Picture's worth 1,000 words. In this case, is very true, so start with that. Bam. That's pretty cool. Let's go through, explain some of the changes. There's now an index on the side. And now if there's an index, we can remove the forward and back buttons. Yes, you can. Oh, mark as red. That's good. Search button, good. They're categorized and indented accordingly. There's a mark as red. Quite a few changes to the GUI layout. Did we just add? Are we going to add a Steam achievement? Read all the tips and tricks. Build a Spidertron. Quite a few changes to the GUI layout, and it works really well. We can go further. The issue remains, the issue that is small, but in the long run, compound interest, it becomes a big source of pain. The problem is that tips are still using images, which means they become outdated as we update things. We have retaken all screenshots so many times over the years. So what can we do about it? Oh, look, animated. Yep. Yep, box to box, belt to entity, entity to belt. That's good. Technically, an MP4 on a web page. We're not putting any GIFs. We are not putting any GIFs in the game. What the GIF shows is a tips and tricks GUI. We can rendering a live real simulation of the entities inside the GUI. Right. This marvel of technology is a divine gift from the very top Coverex. Cool. Simulation widget provides a lot of the initial problems when using screenshots and images. We can go further. You can animate them. This is great. There's a lot of stuff here. We can use a simulation, not just show a factory environment, but using the Lua scripting, we can create entire scripted scenes and demonstrations. This is much more effective in many cases. For instance, seeing the building preview, the mouse movement, and hearing the real sounds. Right, you can you'll be able to hear the thunk, 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 and the right. That's good. We can use a simulation, not just show the factory environment. Using a Lua scripting, we can create scripted scene. Oh, sorry, that's more meaningful. Sorry, read that. Unifying with mini tutorials. Oh, look at here. Well, after another problem, we still have that mini tutorial up in the upper right. So it's a weird and awkward situation that some things are explained in the tips GUI and the others in the mini tutorials. Let's move them all together. And maybe tutorials become one of these, right? Mini tutorials. Yeah, the mini tutorial GUIs are quite a challenge in itself. It has a lot of similar problems to the old tips and tricks. The mini tutorial images are just related technology icons. with the related items underneath. The text gives a short description of what you might expect. Wouldn't it be nice if the mini tutorials could have the same sort of features as tips and tricks? An index, big images, enticing the player to click the play tutorial button. So what if we just somehow put the mini tutorials and tips and tricks GUI? Makes a lot of sense. Unifies communications channel. You now know that if you need help with a topic, there is a one-stop shop to go to get either tips and tricks or tutorials. The mini tutorials had some nice features of their own. They would only show the player. They would only show if the player had met some requirements. And that would be suggested if the player performed certain actions. For instance, train tutorials would show only after you research railway technology. Let's capitalize the R and the T. If we unify the two concepts, we can use the unlock and suggestion features for the tips and tricks. And I would capitalize both T's. Grammar. Grammar. We combine the functionality of the two systems. Mini tutorials are still the same, but they are presented inside of a tip, and we hook this in the suggestion dependency on the tips. We had a mark as red button to show, will show once the dependencies are red. Neato. And now, yep, that's just what I was thinking. We see the new unlocking recommendations of the system. To confirm, let's watch this go. Clear cursor. Introduction. Oh, yeah, so you mark that as red, then it pops out some more. Cool. It means that GUI can only necessarily tips as you progress in the game. Relevant tips are unlocked and shown to you. That's neato. It's very similar to the way the game starts with only a few recipes. If only we had gotten this in the hands of the new players that joined in on 1.0. The tips are moddable. This is great. This is bingo right here. Because it's like the Informatron. Once the last minor issue with the old tips and tricks, they were hard-coded in a sense. They are loaded from very specific JSON file in the core data directory. That means it was not possible for mods to add or change any of the tips. It's only natural then with this modernization of the tips that we open up systems to modders. That's huge. I mean, think about space exploration and what all the stuff we need to know about in terms of how to do space exploration. Right now, we have to have someone who's done it before to tell us how to do it. All right? Hey, that's right. That's right. It is only natural this update of monetization tips. We open up systems of modders. Yep. So it's super easy for a mod to add their own entries. That's huge. It's going to be huge. It's going to be fantastic. The scope of the tips. When adding the new tips, it was tempting to make tips for all of the things. However, some consideration, we decided not to go too far, right? Become a Factorio PD or an in-game wiki. In general, the items is just, we just want to get them started. I agree. The items, the general mechanics display themselves in more direct ways. It's just the entity tool tips, right? What do we want? Is for the tips tricks to explain in mechanics the topics that are more complex, hard to explain, or hard to explain somewhere else. With that in mind, we decided a few loose categories. Number one, things that are not related to some specific item. Alt info, ghost building. Number two, when a visual representation helps a lot, like splitters, belt lanes. I would say something like longhand inserters. I would say something like a one-sided belt or inserters putting on the right side of the belt. That's one where a visual you can visually see that and you go, oh, okay. Or side loading, right? That's a good elementary basic building block. We go, okay, that makes sense to me. And when it's related to something, a combination of more items, gates over rails, like copy paste stuff, the tricks, the lab to lab movement, yes, entities acting as containers. Stack transfers or drag building. Importantly, we should really only explain things that that players actually don't get. I've never heard a complaint of someone doesn't understand how solar panels or accumulators work, so putting these tips tricks would just be a bloat. Right, I agree. That's a good example. About the only math that you need to know, or the only thing that you need to know is there's sunshine, and you only get peak performance when the sun is at its peak, and that's when you get your 60 kilowatts, and then it goes off from there. Yeah, that's probably about the only thing, and that one you can kind of look at. You can kind of figure that out intuitively. It's a good example. Right. Yeah, but containers, lab-to-lab movement, the entities acting as containers, that would have been, that's really handy for new players to know, because they end up trying to make these long sushi belt things, and they don't have to. Importantly, we should really explain things that actually players don't get. Conclusion. We were quite happy with the result. The tips and tricks GUI was always one of those paradoxical systems, both extremely useful and terribly ineffective at the same time. Oh, cool. Hope all the effort channel into it will help. Speaking of help, we need your help. What kind of tips, tricks have you found useful playing the game? Search TIL on Reddit. Today I learned. How about you just go hit my video, ! Top 10. Show that up. Clonin, let me hit me up. Maybe I'll message him here in a minute. So if you want to give us feedback to the FFF discussion, the best place to do it, yes, we do. We read Reddit. Or someone, I'm not saying who, I certainly can't say it. I certainly can't go to Reddit and promote my stuff. But you could. So if you want to give us feedback, the FFF discussion is the best place to do it. Yes, we do. You read it. All right. Nice. All right. Launch the rocket. That's a big FFF. How about that? All right. Very good FFF. And it is good to hear from the Woob developers again. And I'm super happy that the work on Factorio is proceeding along. I like the train change, and it looks like they're going to open up some big possibilities with the reservation system. That's a really good simple rule that's going to change. That's going to change and open up a lot of interesting designs, I think, especially if you can control it with circuits. Anyway, thank you very much. Hit that like and subscribe if you like this sort of thing. Thanks for all your support, and we'll see you next time.